I didn't sign up to be caught between two brothers who hated each other.
The Korean powerful twin brothers were destroying each other over their father's fortune until Elena packed her bags and they both dropped to their knees, begging their black wife. Elena didn't know Kim Jae-won and Kim Tae-won had other plans. Besties, before we dive into this emotionally charged story of love, betrayal, and impossible choices, please hit the subscribe button. Your support keeps stories like this alive, and trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. The voices of the angry brothers echoed through the penthouse as Elena dragged her suitcase toward the door. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from the crushing weight of a decision she never thought she'd have to make. Behind her, in the wreckage of what was supposed to be their home, two identical faces stared at her with identical expressions of devastation. "We're not letting you leave." Jaewon's voice cut through the silence like a blade. He stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, his reflection in the glass showing a man barely holding himself together. His perfectly tailored suit was rumpled, his black hair disheveled from running his fingers through it too many times. "This isn't how this ends, Elena. This isn't how we end. You don't get to decide that." Elena's voice cracked despite her best efforts to sound strong. "Not after everything. Not after what you both have done to each other, to us, to this marriage. You made your choices. Now I'm making mine." Taewon moved from where he'd been standing against the wall, his jaw clenched so tightly she could see the muscle jumping. 1 month. We've been married 1 month, Elena. For weeks. And you're just going to throw it all away because things got difficult? Difficult? The word burst out of her like a gunshot. She whirled to face him, tears burning in her eyes, but refusing to fall. "You call your brother a thief in front of your entire family. He calls you a manipulative snake. You physically fought at your father's memorial dinner. Difficult doesn't even begin to cover what this has become." The marriage had been unexpected, a whirlwind that swept Elena off her feet before she understood what was happening. She'd met them at a charity gala in Seoul, two devastatingly handsome Korean men who looked so alike she'd thought she was seeing double. Jaewon, the older twin by 7 minutes, was the CEO of Kim Industries, methodical and controlled. Taewon, the younger, was the creative director, passionate and impulsive. Both had pursued her with an intensity that made her head spin. "We know this is unconventional," Jaewon had said that first night, his dark eyes holding hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "But in Korea, in our family, sometimes love doesn't follow traditional paths. We both want you, Elena. We're both in love with you. And we're asking if you could love us both." It had seemed impossible, insane, but also thrilling in a way she'd never experienced. Growing up in Nigeria, moving to Korea for graduate school, she'd always felt like an outsider. But with them, she'd felt seen, wanted, cherished. They'd courted her together, made her laugh, made her feel like the center of the universe. The wedding had been small, private, just the 3 of them and a handful of witnesses who understood their unique arrangement. But that was before their father died, before the will was read, before everything turned to ash. "You want to know why we're fighting?" Taewon's voice dropped to something dangerous, something raw. "Because our father left everything, the entire empire, to whoever can prove they're more worthy. And the only way to prove that is through you." Elena's blood ran cold. "What?" Jaewon shot his brother a murderous look. "You absolute idiot. I told you not to tell her like this." "Tell me what?" Elena's suitcase fell from her hand, forgotten. "Tell me exactly what, Taewon." Taewon's expression shifted to something like regret, but he pressed forward anyway. "The will. Father's will states that his entire fortune, all his shares in the company, everything, goes to whichever son you choose to stay married to. If you leave us both, if you divorce us, everything goes to charity. We get nothing." The room tilted. Elena grabbed the back of a chair to steady herself. "So this whole time, this whole month, you've been fighting over me like I'm some kind of prize? Like I'm just a means to an inheritance?" "No." Jaewon crossed the room in 3 long strides, reaching for her, but she stepped back. "Don't touch me." His hands fell to his sides, and the pain in his eyes looked genuine, but Elena didn't know what to believe anymore. "It started that way, yes. Father knew we both wanted you, knew we'd proposed this arrangement. He used it, manipulated it to force us to compete. But what I feel for you, Elena, what we both feel for you, that's real. That has nothing to do with money or inheritance. How am I supposed to believe that? Tears finally spilled over, hot tracks down her cheeks. How am I supposed to know what's real and what's just you both playing parts to win a game I didn't even know I was in? Because I'm willing to walk away from all of it. Taewon's voice was fierce, desperate. Everyone, every share, every piece of the empire. If that's what it takes to prove I love you, I'll sign it all over to him right now. Just don't leave. Please don't leave. Elena looked between them, these two men who had somehow become her entire world in just 30 days. Jaewon, who brought her coffee every morning exactly how she liked it and kissed her forehead when he thought she was sleeping. Taewon, who left drawings on her pillow, sketches of her face that captured not just her features but her soul. They'd made her feel things she'd never felt before, shown her pleasure she didn't know existed, built a life together that felt like coming home. But they'd also lied. They'd kept this massive truth from her while tearing each other apart over an inheritance she never wanted any part of. I need to know something, she said quietly, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. And I need the truth. Did you marry me because you loved me, or because your father's will made me valuable? Both. Jaewon's honesty was brutal, but at least it was honest. Father announced the terms of his will the day before we proposed. We'd been pursuing you for weeks already, both falling for you in ways we didn't expect. But yes, knowing that marrying you would secure our future, that made us move faster. That made us push for something unconventional instead of forcing you to choose between us. So you trapped me. Elena's voice was hollow. You both trapped me in a marriage where I can't leave without destroying everything, where I can't choose one without hurting the other, where I'm just a pawn in your father's sick game. You're not a pawn. Taewon moved closer, and this time she didn't step back. You're the queen, Elena. You hold all the power here. We're the ones trapped by how much we need you, how much we love you, how incomplete we are without you. If you felt the sting of Elena's betrayal, if your heart is racing wondering what she'll do next, you need to stay with this story. Subscribe now because what happens next will shock you. These brothers are about to reveal secrets that change everything, and Elena's choice will determine not just her future, but the fate of an entire empire. Don't miss what comes next. Hit that subscribe button right now. Elena's phone buzzed in her pocket, but she ignored it. Everything felt surreal, like she was watching her life fall apart from outside her own body. The penthouse that had felt like a palace when they'd carried her over the threshold 4 weeks ago now felt like a gilded cage. The view of Seoul's glittering skyline that had taken her breath away on her first night here now seemed to mock her, a reminder of how far she'd fallen into a world she didn't understand. Say something. Jaewon's voice was barely above a whisper. Please, Elena. Yell at us, curse at us, hit us if you need to. But don't just stand there looking at us like we're strangers. That's exactly what you feel like right now. She met his gaze, and the raw pain in his eyes almost broke her resolve. Strangers who happen to share my bed. Strangers who know every inch of my body, but kept the most important truth hidden from me. We were protecting you. Taewon's hands clenched into fists at his sides. Father's will, his games, the pressure from the board of directors, all of it, we wanted to shield you from that. We wanted you to feel loved, not used. But I was being used. Elena's laugh was bitter, broken. By all of you. Your father used me to control his sons from beyond the grave. You both used me to secure your inheritance. And I, the naive foreign girl who thought she'd found her fairy tale, I let myself be used because I was too blind to see the truth. The fairy tale is real. Jaewon's voice turned urgent, pleading in a way she'd never heard from him before. The carefully controlled CEO facade had crumbled completely, revealing something raw and vulnerable underneath. Every morning when I wake up next to you, when I see you sleeping between us, that's real, Elena. The way my heart stops when you smile, the way I can't focus on anything when you're in the room, the way I feel complete for the first time in my life, that's not an act. That's not about money or inheritance or winning some sick game. Then prove it. The words came out before Elena could stop them. Both of you. Prove that I'm more than just a means to an end. How? Taewon closed the distance between them, and this time she let him. His hands cupped her face with a gentleness that contradicted the desperation in his eyes. Tell us what you need, and we'll do it. Anything, everything. Just tell us how to fix this. You can't. Elena's voice cracked as fresh tears spilled over. Because even if I believe that you love me now, even if what we have is real, you're still destroying each other. The fighting, the accusations, the hatred between you, it's tearing this family apart. And I'm the reason why. Your father made me the wedge that's driving you two apart, and I won't be that person. So you'd rather leave. Jaewon's jaw tightened. You'd rather walk away and let our father win, even from his grave. You'd rather destroy all three of us instead of fighting for what we have. What do we have? Elena pulled away from Taewon's touch, needing space to think, to breathe. 1 month of bliss built on lies? 1 month of pretending we're a normal family while you two wage war against each other behind my back? That's not a marriage. That's not love. That's just 3 people playing house while the foundation crumbles beneath us. Her phone buzzed again, insistent. This time she pulled it out, grateful for the distraction. The screen showed a text from her best friend back in Nigeria, just checking in, asking how married life was treating her. The irony was so sharp it hurt. Who is it? Taewon's voice held an edge she recognized, the jealousy that flared whenever she paid attention to anything or anyone besides them. Does it matter? Elena pocketed the phone. You don't get to question me about my contacts when you've been keeping secrets that affect my entire life. You're right. Jaewon's admission surprised her. You're absolutely right. We don't have the right to ask anything of you. But I'm going to anyway. I'm going to be selfish and desperate and tell you that if you walk out that door, you'll be taking the only good thing in my life with you. Elena's resolve wavered. She'd spent the last hour packing, rehearsing what she'd say, steeling herself for this moment. But nothing could have prepared her for the reality of it, for the way her heart was being ripped in 2 directions by 2 men who looked at her like she was their oxygen. Tell me about the will. Her voice was steadier now, more controlled. Tell me everything. All the details your father put in there, all the conditions, all the ways he's trying to manipulate us from beyond the grave. If I'm going to make a decision, I need to know exactly what I'm deciding. The brothers exchanged a long look, some silent communication passing between them. Finally, Jaewon nodded and moved to the bar, pouring 3 glasses of whiskey with hands that shook slightly. Taewon gestured to the sofa, and Elena found herself sitting between them, the 3 of them arranged exactly as they'd been on their wedding night when everything had seemed perfect and full of promise. Father's will is 73 pages long. Jaewon took a long drink before continuing. But the relevant parts are simple. He left Kim Industries, all his personal assets, and his controlling shares in 6 subsidiary companies to whichever son remains married to you after 1 year. If you divorce us both before the year is up, everything goes to a charitable foundation he established. If you choose one of us over the other, that son inherits everything and the other gets a modest severance package and is removed from all company positions. 1 year. Elena's mind raced. We've been married 1 month. So I have to stay for 11 more months before anyone inherits anything? Technically, yes. Taewon's hand found hers, his fingers intertwining with hers in a gesture so familiar it made her chest ache. But there are quarterly evaluations. Every 3 months, you have to appear before the board and the executors of the will to confirm that the marriage is legitimate, that you're happy, that this isn't just a business arrangement. And if I tell them I'm not happy, that this is exactly a business arrangement, then the will is voided and everything goes to charity. Jaewon set his glass down with careful precision. Which is why we need you to understand, Elena. This isn't just about money for us. Yes, losing the inheritance would be devastating. Yes, it would mean losing the company our grandfather built, the legacy our father wanted us to fight over. But losing you, that would destroy us in ways that have nothing to do with money. Pretty words. Elena pulled her hand free from Taewon's grip. But how do I know they're not just what you think I want to hear? How do I know that once you secure your inheritance, once the year is up and the money is safely in your accounts, you won't suddenly realize you don't need me anymore? Because we needed you before we knew about the will. Taewon's voice was fierce, urgent. That night at the gala, when you laughed at my terrible joke about kimchi, when you challenged Jaewon's entire presentation on global markets, when you stood in that gold dress looking like you belonged in our world but weren't trying to fit in, that's when we fell for you. Not when father announced his plan. Before that. Way before that. Elena wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe both of them. But trust, once broken, wasn't easily repaired. There's more. Jaewon's voice was quiet, almost defeated. Something we haven't told you yet. Something that makes this whole situation even more complicated. Elena's stomach dropped. Of course there's more. What else could there possibly be? The first quarterly evaluation is in 2 weeks. Taewon's hand ran through his hair, a gesture of frustration she knew well. And father's lawyers have already scheduled it. They'll be asking you detailed questions about your relationship with each of us, about the dynamics of our marriage, about whether you entered into this freely or under duress. If they suspect any coercion, any unhappiness, they can void the will immediately. So I have 2 weeks to decide if I'm going to keep playing this game or burn everything down. Elena stood abruptly, needing distance, needing air. 2 weeks to figure out if what we have is real or if I've just been a fool who fell for the wrong men at the wrong time. Elena, please. Are you captivated by Elena's impossible situation? Can you feel the weight of her decision, the pull of 2 men who might be lying or might be telling the truth she desperately wants to believe? Subscribe now because what happens in the next 2 weeks will change everything. These brothers have secrets that go deeper than inheritance, and Elena is about to discover that the biggest betrayal hasn't even been revealed yet. Don't miss what comes next. Hit that subscribe button. Don't say my name like that. Elena's voice rose, all the hurt and confusion of the past hours finally breaking through. Don't use that soft, pleading tone that makes me want to forget everything and fall back into your arms. I need to think. I need space. I need to figure out who I am outside of being the thing you two are fighting over. Then take space, Jaewon said, standing slowly. But take it here. In our home. Don't leave, Elena. Please don't leave. Why? She spun to face him. Give me one reason why I should stay that has nothing to do with money or inheritance or your father's manipulation. Because I love you. The words came out raw, unpolished, nothing like the controlled businessman who usually spoke in calculated sentences. Because for 30 days I've woken up knowing that my life finally makes sense. Because you make me laugh, make me want to be better, make me feel things I thought I was too broken to feel. Because losing you would be like losing air, Elena. I can't breathe without you. Taewon stood as well, his artist's hands trembling slightly. Because you're the only person who sees both of us as individuals instead of just the Kim twins. Because you love my paintings even though they're dark and weird. Because you let me sketch you when you sleep and you never complain that I'm too intense or too much. Because I was drowning before you and you didn't even know you were saving me. Elena's heart cracked open at their confessions. She could see the truth in their eyes, hear it in their voices. But truth and love weren't always enough, not when everything else was built on deception. I need air, she said finally. I need to walk, to think, to be alone for a few hours. Then we'll come with you, Taewon said immediately. No. Elena held up her hand. Alone. Just me. You both need to give me that much at least. It's not safe, Jaewon protested. Seoul at night, you don't know the city well enough, and there are people who would use you to get to us. Then have your security follow me from a distance, Elena compromised. But I need space from you both. Right now, looking at your faces just reminds me of everything I don't know, everything you've kept from me. The brothers exchanged another one of their silent communications, and finally Jaewon nodded. For hours. We'll give you 4 hours. But then you come back and we talk about this like adults. No more running, Elena. We face this together. I'm not the one who's been running from the truth, Elena said quietly, grabbing her coat. That's been you too. She left before either could respond, before the tears she'd been holding back could fall, before she could see the devastation on their identical faces and let it change her mind. The night air hit her like a slap, cold and sharp and cleansing. Elena walked without direction, her feet carrying her through streets she barely recognized. The security guard Jaewon had called followed at a discreet distance, a shadow she pretended not to notice. Her phone buzzed continuously. Messages from both brothers, apologies and declarations and desperate pleas. She silenced it and kept walking. How had her life become this? For weeks ago, she'd been a graduate student focused on her research, living in a tiny studio apartment, eating ramen for dinner most nights. Now she was married to 2 men, living in a penthouse worth more than she'd earn in 10 lifetimes, caught in a web of inheritance and family drama that felt like something from a television show. You look lost. The voice came from her left, accented Korean that told her the speaker wasn't a native. Elena turned to find an older woman, African like her, sitting at a pojangmaka, a street food tent. I am lost, Elena admitted, surprised by her own honesty. Then sit, the woman gestured to the empty stool beside her. Have some tegbaki. Everything seems clearer with food in your stomach. Elena sat, grateful for the kindness of a stranger. The woman ordered for both of them, and soon they were sharing spicy rice cakes and fish cakes in comfortable silence. Man trouble? The woman asked eventually. Elena laughed, the sound bitter. Is it that obvious? You have that look. The look of a woman trying to figure out if love is worth the pain it causes. The woman's eyes were kind, knowing. I've worn that look myself many times. How did you decide? Elena asked. If it was worth it? I asked myself one question, the woman said, taking a sip of her soju. Was I more afraid of the pain he might cause me, or the pain of living without him? Elena sat with that, the question settling into her bones. What was she more afraid of? The possibility that Jaewon and Taewon had used her, that their love was conditional on inheritance money? Or the certainty of walking away from the two men who had shown her what it felt like to be completely, utterly cherished? It's more complicated than just one man, Elena said softly. The woman's eyebrows rose, but there was no judgment in her expression. Then ask yourself if the complication is worth the love. Sometimes the most beautiful things in life are the most complicated. They finished their food in silence, and Elena paid for both of them despite the woman's protests. As she stood to leave, the woman caught her hand. Whatever you decide, she said, make sure it's your choice. Not what they want, not what anyone expects. Your choice for your reasons. That's the only way you'll be able to live with it. Elena nodded, thanked her, and continued walking. The woman's words echoed in her mind, mixing with everything Jaewon and Taewon had said, creating a complicated symphony of emotion and logic and fear and hope. Her phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't a text but a call. From her mother in Nigeria. Mama, Elena answered, her voice thick with emotion. Elena, my daughter, what's wrong? I can hear tears in your voice. And just like that, everything poured out. The inheritance, the fighting, the feeling of being trapped and used and confused. Her mother listened without interruption, the way she always had, and when Elena finally finished, there was a long pause. Do you love them? Her mother asked simply. Yes, Elena whispered. God help me, I love them both. Then that's your answer, my daughter. Love isn't easy. Love isn't simple. But it's always worth fighting for. Her mother's voice was firm, certain. Your father, God rest his soul, he wasn't perfect. He made mistakes, kept secrets, drove me crazy more times than I can count. But I loved him. And that love made every difficult moment worth it. But what if they're just using me, Mama? What if the love isn't real? Then you'll find out, her mother said gently. But if you run now, you'll never know. You'll spend the rest of your life wondering what if. Is that the life you want? A life of what ifs. Elena stood on a bridge overlooking the Han River, the water reflecting the city lights like scattered stars. Below her, Seoul pulsed with life, millions of people living their complicated, messy, beautiful lives. And somewhere in this vast city, two men were waiting for her, hoping she'd come back, terrified she wouldn't. I have to go, Mama, Elena said softly. I have a decision to make. Make the one you can live with, her mother advised. And remember, my daughter, sometimes the bravest thing we can do is stay and fight instead of running away. Elena ended the call and stood there for a long moment, letting the cold wind clear her head. The security guard maintained his distance, patient and professional. She checked her watch. 2 hours had passed since she'd left the penthouse. She had 2 more hours before her self-imposed deadline. But she already knew what she was going to do. The walk back to the penthouse felt both too long and too short. Elena's heart pounded with every step, fear and determination mixing into something that felt almost like courage. She had questions that needed answering, boundaries that needed setting, truths that needed telling. But she was going back. The elevator ride up to the penthouse felt eternal. When the doors finally opened, Elena found both brothers in the living room, looking like they hadn't moved since she'd left. Jaewon stood by the window in the exact same position, while Taewon sat on the sofa, his head in his hands. They looked up simultaneously when she entered, identical expressions of hope and fear on their faces. I'm staying, Elena said before either could speak. But on my terms. With my conditions. And if either of you lie to me again, if either of you keep one more secret, I'm gone and I won't come back. Understood. Can you feel Elena's strength emerging from her confusion? Can you sense the shift happening as she takes control of her own story? Subscribe now because what Elena demands from these brothers will shock you. The conditions she's about to set will test their love in ways they never expected, and the secrets that are about to be revealed will change everything you thought you knew about this marriage. Understood, Jae-won said immediately, his voice hoarse like he'd been crying. Tae-won simply nodded, unable to speak, his eyes red-rimmed and devastated. Elena set her coat on the chair and moved to stand in front of them, her posture straight, her voice steady. First condition. No more secrets. I don't care how ugly the truth is, how much you think it will hurt me, or how much you want to protect me. From this moment forward, complete honesty. About the will, about the company, about your relationship with each other, about everything. Agreed, Tae-won said, his voice rough. What else? Second condition. You two stop destroying each other. Elena's gaze moved between them, hard and uncompromising. I don't care what your father's will says. I don't care about the competition or the inheritance. You're brothers. You shared a womb. You shared a childhood. You shared everything until greed and pride turned you into enemies. That ends now. Tonight. Elena, it's not that simple, Jae-won started, but she cut him off. I'm not finished. Her voice was sharp, commanding in a way she'd never used with them before. You're going to sit down together, without me, and you're going to remember why you loved each other before you hated each other. You're going to figure out how to be brothers again, because I refuse to be the reason a family tears itself apart. And if we can't? Tae-won asked quietly. If the damage is too deep? Then we all lose, Elena said simply. Because I won't stay in a marriage where I'm the prize in a competition between brothers. I won't be the weapon your father uses to destroy you. Either we're a family, all three of us together, or I walk away and let the inheritance go to charity like your father planned. The weight of her ultimatum settled over the room like a heavy blanket. Jae-won moved first, crossing to his brother, extending his hand. Tae-won stared at it for a long moment, years of hurt and anger and betrayal flickering across his face. Then slowly, he reached out and took it. I'm sorry, Jae-won said, and his voice cracked. I'm sorry for the things I said at the memorial. I'm sorry for accusing you of stealing design concepts. I'm sorry for letting father's poison infect what we had. I'm sorry too. Tae-won's grip tightened on his brother's hand. I'm sorry for calling you heartless and cold. I'm sorry for trying to undermine you with the board. I'm sorry for forgetting that we used to be a team. Elena watched as they pulled each other into an embrace, two grown men holding onto each other like they were drowning and the other was a lifeline. Tears streamed down both their faces, and she felt her own eyes burning with emotion. Third condition, she said softly, and they broke apart to look at her. You tell me everything about the will. Every clause, every condition, every trap your father set. And then we decide together how we're going to handle it. Not as individuals competing, but as a unit. As a family. They moved to the dining table and Jae-won retrieved a thick folder from his office. For the next 2 hours, they went through every page of their father's will, and with each revelation, Elena's anger at a man she'd never met grew stronger. He put in a clause about heirs, Tae-won explained, his finger pointing to a particularly dense paragraph. If you bear a child within the first year of marriage, that child becomes the primary beneficiary of a separate trust fund. But here's the twisted part. The DNA testing required to determine paternity means whichever one of us is the biological father gains additional voting shares in the company. Elena's hand flew to her stomach instinctively. So he was trying to make me a breeding mare too? Turn a potential pregnancy into another competition between you. Our father was a brilliant businessman and a terrible human being, Jae-won said bitterly. He believed that competition made people stronger, that conflict bred excellence. He never understood that it also breeds resentment and hatred. There's more, Tae-won said, flipping to another section. If you show signs of favoritism toward one of us, if you spend significantly more time with one brother than the other, if you're physically intimate with one but not both within any given week, the executors can declare the marriage arrangement invalid. He was monitoring our bedroom? Elena's voice rose in outrage. How exactly were they supposed to know who I'm sleeping with? Weekly reports, Jae-won admitted, his jaw tight. We're required to submit documentation about the state of our relationship. Mrs. Chin, our housekeeper, she's actually employed by the estate executors. She's been reporting to them since the wedding. Elena stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. So we've had a spy in our home this entire time? Someone watching us, documenting our private moments. Not exactly, Taewon said quickly. She only reports on surface-level things. Whether we eat meals together, whether we seem happy, whether there are signs of conflict. She can't, and doesn't, report on anything that happens in our private quarters. But the fact remains that our marriage is being observed and judged by strangers who get to decide if we're performing it correctly. Elena's hands shook with rage. Your father didn't just trap us in an arrangement. He turned our entire life into a spectacle for his entertainment. He's dead, Jae-won said quietly. He can't enjoy any of this. But yes, he set it up to continue controlling us even from the grave. That's who he was. A man who couldn't let go of control even in death. Elena sank back into her chair, overwhelmed by the scope of the manipulation. The quarterly evaluations, what exactly do they entail? Taewon pulled out another document. You'll meet with 3 executors, lawyers your father trusted. They'll ask you questions about your marriage, your feelings for each of us, your daily life. They'll want to know if you entered the marriage freely, if you're being coerced or manipulated, if you're happy. And if I tell them I'm not happy, then they investigate further, Jae-won said. They can interview staff, review security footage from common areas, even require psychological evaluations. If they determine that the marriage is a sham, that you're being held against your will in any way, or that we're violating the spirit of the will's requirements, everything goes to charity immediately. But here's the thing, Taewon leaned forward, his eyes intense. The spirit of the will, according to father's own words in the document, is that we prove we can work together, love the same woman equally, and build a family without destroying each other. He wanted to know if we could overcome our competitive nature for something more important. So in a twisted way, Elena said slowly, he was trying to teach you a lesson. Trying to force you to value family over individual success. By making you the battleground, Jae-won said bitterly. By putting an innocent woman in the middle of his sick social experiment. That's not teaching, Elena. That's torture. Elena stood and moved to the window, looking out at the Seoul skyline. Behind her, she could hear the brothers breathing, waiting for her verdict. The city below was full of people living normal lives, facing normal problems. And here she was, trapped in something that felt like a twisted fairy tale. 4th condition, she said without turning around. We beat him at his own game. We prove that we can be a real family, not because of his will, but in spite of it. We show those executors a marriage built on actual love, actual partnership, actual commitment. And then, when the year is up and the inheritance is secure, we donate half of it to charity anyway. What? Both brothers spoke simultaneously. Elena turned to face them. You heard me. Half the inheritance goes to charity. To organizations that help families, that support love and unity instead of competition and division. We take your father's weapon and turn it into something good. That's how we win. Not by playing his game, but by changing the rules entirely. Jae-won stared at her like he'd never seen her before. You're serious. You want us to give away billions of won. I want us to prove that this marriage is worth more than money, Elena said firmly. I want to look those executors in the eye and know that, even if we lost everything tomorrow, we'd still choose each other. Can you do that? Can you both honestly say that I'm worth more to you than your father's empire? Yes. Taewon didn't hesitate. Without question, without doubt. You're worth everything, Elena. Jae-won was silent longer, his businessman's mind clearly calculating, considering. Then he smiled, and it was the first genuine smile she'd seen from him in days. Our father would absolutely hate this plan. Which is exactly why it's perfect. Yes, Elena. Let's burn half his empire and build something better with the ashes. Elena felt something loosen in her chest, a knot of fear and doubt that had been choking her since she'd learned the truth. Then we have a plan. We survive the next 11 months. We prove to those executors that this marriage is real. We become the family your father didn't think you could be. And we do it together. Together, both brothers echoed. But first, Elena moved toward them. You two are going to tell me everything else. Every secret, every skeleton in the closet, every piece of information you've been keeping from me because you thought I couldn't handle it. Right now. Tonight. No more surprises. The brothers exchanged another glance, and Elena saw something flicker across their faces. Hesitation, fear, guilt. There is one more thing, Jae-won said slowly. Something we haven't told you. Something about why father chose you specifically for this arrangement. Elena's stomach dropped. What do you mean, chose me specifically? Our father didn't just know about you because we were courting you, Taewon said, his voice heavy with regret. He'd been tracking you for almost a year before we ever met. He had investigators following you, researching your background, your personality, your values. He chose you, Elena. He engineered our meeting at that gala. He made sure you'd be there, made sure we'd notice you. None of it was accidental. The room tilted. Elena grabbed the edge of the table to steady herself. You're saying our entire relationship, from the very beginning, was manipulated by your father? Are you feeling Elena's world shatter again just when she thought she had answers? Can you sense the depth of the manipulation that goes back further than anyone imagined? Subscribe now because the truth about how this marriage really began will leave you speechless. The secrets these brothers are about to reveal will make everything you've learned so far seem simple. Not our feelings, J1 said urgently, moving toward her. Not what we feel for you, Elena. That was real. That is real. But yes, the circumstances that brought us together, Father orchestrated all of it. Elena's legs gave out and she sank into the nearest chair. How long have you known this? We found out 3 days after the wedding, Taewon admitted, his voice thick with shame. Father's personal assistant delivered a file to us. It contained everything, every report from the investigators, every psychological profile they'd built on you, every carefully planned moment that led to that gala. 3 days, Elena repeated numbly. You've known for almost a month that our entire relationship was built on lies, and you said nothing. We were terrified. J1 knelt in front of her chair, his hands hovering near hers, but not touching, as if he was afraid she'd break. We were terrified that if you knew, you'd see our love as tainted. That you'd never believe that what we feel for you transcends how we met. Tell me everything. Elena's voice was hollow, distant. Every detail of how your father manipulated me, manipulated all of us. Taewon retrieved another folder, this one even thicker than the will. He started tracking you 18 months ago. You were finishing your master's degree, working part-time at that cafe near campus. His investigators noted that you were intelligent, kind, independent, and had strong moral values. You also had no family in Korea, which made you vulnerable to forming strong attachments. Elena felt sick. Every word was a knife, cutting away at the foundation of what she'd thought was her life. He knew we were both struggling with the expectation of marriage, J1 continued, his voice strained. We'd both had failed relationships, both refused to marry women who only saw dollar signs. He knew that we'd discussed, privately between us, the idea of sharing a wife. Of finding one woman we could both love, who could love us both, who could be the bridge between us instead of a wedge. So he found that woman for you, Elena said bitterly. He found me, studied me like a lab rat, and then delivered me to you gift-wrapped at a charity gala. He paid for your ticket to that gala, Taewon said quietly. It was invitation only, and you wouldn't have qualified normally. He arranged for you to sit at our table. He even had someone spill wine on your dress, so you'd have to leave your seat and we'd follow to help you. Elena remembered that night so clearly. The beautiful dress she'd borrowed from a friend, the shock of cold wine soaking through silk, the 2 handsome men who'd rushed to help her, offering their jackets, their concern, their charm. It had felt like fate, like the universe conspiring to bring them together. It had been conspiracy, just not the universe. Just a manipulative old man playing God with people's lives. Why me specifically? Elena asked, needing to understand. Out of all the women in Seoul, why did he choose me? Because you were perfect, J1 said simply. Not perfect in the conventional sense, but perfect for us. You were strong enough to handle our world, but untainted by it. You were educated and intelligent enough to contribute to conversations about our business. You were beautiful in a way that would make us both want you. And most importantly, you had the kind of moral center that would force us to be better men. He wanted someone who would challenge you, Elena realized. Someone who wouldn't just go along with everything, who would push back, who would demand better from you both. He knew that we needed someone strong enough to handle us at our worst, Taewon added. Someone who wouldn't break under the pressure of our world, our family dynamics, our intensity. And he was right, Elena. You've handled everything we've thrown at you with more grace than we deserved. Don't. Elena's voice cracked. Don't try to make this sound like something noble. Your father studied me like I was a product he was purchasing for his sons. He violated my privacy, manipulated my life, and robbed me of my agency in choosing my own future. There's nothing graceful about being someone's experiment. Silence fell, heavy and suffocating. Elena could hear the clock on the wall ticking, counting down seconds of a life she no longer recognized. I need to ask you something, she said finally, looking at both of them. And I need complete honesty. If your father hadn't orchestrated our meeting, if you'd met me randomly, genuinely, would you still have fallen for me? Yes, both brothers said simultaneously, with such certainty that Elena almost believed them. How can you know that? She pressed. How can you possibly know what you would have felt in different circumstances? Jaewon stood and moved to the window, his shoulders tense. Because father didn't create my feelings, Elena. He created the opportunity, yes. But every conversation we had, every laugh we shared, every moment I fell deeper in love with you, that was real. He couldn't manufacture chemistry. He couldn't force me to think about you every waking moment. He couldn't make my heart race every time you smiled. Those feelings were mine, independent of his manipulation. He couldn't make me dream about you, Taewon added, moving to stand beside his brother. He couldn't make me want to draw you constantly, to capture every expression, every gesture. He couldn't make me feel complete for the first time in my life when you agreed to marry us. That was all real, Elena. The circumstances were manufactured, but the love was genuine. Elena wanted to believe them. Every fiber of her being wanted to accept their words as truth, to forgive the deception and move forward. But trust, once shattered, wasn't easily restored. The file, she said quietly. I want to see it. Every page, every report, every detail of how your father studied me. I want to know exactly what he learned, what he thought he knew about me. Taewon hesitated. Elena, reading that file, it won't help. It'll only hurt more. That's not your decision to make, Elena stood, her voice firm. You don't get to protect me from the truth anymore. You don't get to decide what I can or cannot handle. If I'm going to stay, if I'm going to fight for this marriage, I need to know everything. I need to see myself through your father's eyes, so I can understand exactly what I'm up against. Jaewon retrieved the file and handed it to her. The folder was heavy, full of photographs, psychological assessments, daily activity logs. Elena's hands shook as she opened it. The first page was a photograph of her leaving her apartment building, completely unaware she was being watched. The caption beneath read, "Subject demonstrates consistent routine, suggesting reliability and stability." Subject. Not a person, not a woman with hopes and dreams. A subject. She flipped through more pages. Pictures of her at the library, at the cafe where she'd worked, at the grocery store. Notes about her friendships, her academic performance, her financial situation. There was even a section analyzing her body language, her speech patterns, her emotional responses to stress. This is insane, Elena whispered. This is absolutely insane. I know, Jaewon said quietly. When we saw it, we were horrified. But we were also trapped, Elena. We'd already married you by then. We'd already fallen in love with you. Walking away would have meant losing you, and we couldn't bear that thought. Elena reached a section titled, Predicted Response to Proposal. She read in horror as the investigator outlined exactly how she would react to the unusual marriage arrangement, predicting her hesitation, her curiosity, her ultimate acceptance with disturbing accuracy. He knew, she breathed. He knew exactly how I'd respond to everything. He'd mapped out my entire personality and used it to trap me. He trapped all of us, Taewon said. That's what he did. He built an elaborate cage and put all three of us inside it, thinking he was teaching us something valuable. But all he really did was show us what kind of man he was, manipulative, controlling, unable to trust that his sons could build something good without his interference. Elena closed the file, unable to read more. I need time to process this. I need to sit with everything you've told me and figure out what it means for us. How much time? Jaewon asked, and she could hear the fear in his voice. I don't know, Elena admitted. But I'm not leaving. I'm staying in the penthouse in our home. I just need space to think, to feel, to figure out who I am separate from your father's expectations and predictions. We can give you space, Taewon said. We can stay in our separate rooms, give you the master suite. Whatever you need. No, Elena surprised herself by saying, I don't want physical distance. I want emotional honesty. I want us to live together, eat together, exist together, but without the pretense. No more performing for each other or for your father's memory. Just three people trying to figure out if they can build something real from a foundation of lies. We can do that, Jaewon agreed. We can be honest, brutally honest if that's what you need. Elena moved to stand between them, looking at their identical faces that she'd learned to tell apart by the smallest details. Jaewon's left eyebrow had a tiny scar from a childhood accident. Taewon's smile was slightly more crooked, reaching his right eye before his left. These small imperfections had become precious to her. "I need you both to understand something," she said carefully. "I'm choosing to stay, but I'm not choosing to forgive. Not yet. Forgiveness has to be earned through actions, not words. You both have to prove, every single day, that I'm more than a means to an inheritance. That I'm more than your father's carefully selected breeding stock. That I'm a partner, an equal, someone whose autonomy and agency you respect." "We will," both brothers said in unison. "And one more thing." Elena's voice hardened. "We find out who else knew about your father's manipulation. Mrs. Chin, the investigators, anyone who was complicit in this deception. I want to know who I can and cannot trust in this house." "Agreed," Jae-won said. "I'll get you a complete list by tomorrow." "Tonight," Elena corrected. "You'll get me the list tonight. No more delays, no more protecting me from uncomfortable truths. Tonight." Taewon pulled out his phone. "I'll make the calls now." "Besties, can you feel Elena taking back her power? Can you sense the shift as she transforms from victim to victor, from pawn to queen? Subscribe now because what Elena does next will redefine everything. Don't miss the moment when Elena shows everyone, including a dead man's legacy, that she cannot be controlled. Hit that subscribe button right now." Within an hour, 4 people sat in the penthouse living room, their faces varying degrees of nervous and defiant. Mrs. Chin, the housekeeper who'd been reporting to the estate executors. Director Kang, the head of security who'd coordinated the surveillance. Attorney Min, one of the lawyers who'd helped draft the will. And Dr. Yoon, the psychologist who'd created Elena's profile. Elena sat in the center like a judge, with Jae-won and Taewon flanking her on either side. She changed into a black dress, armor for this confrontation, and pulled her hair back severely. She looked every inch the powerful woman she was becoming. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," Elena said, her voice cold and controlled. "I'm sure you're wondering why you're here." "Mrs. Kim," Attorney Min started, but Elena cut him off with a raised hand. "Don't call me that. Don't use the name of a family that's done nothing but manipulate and deceive me." Her eyes swept across each of them. "You all participated in a conspiracy to control my life. You studied me, profiled me, reported on me, all without my knowledge or consent. So before we go any further, I want to hear from each of you why you did it." Mrs. Chin spoke first, her voice quiet but steady. "I was following orders, Mrs. Kim, Miss Elena. The late Mr. Kim paid my salary, provided for my family. When he asked me to observe and report, I couldn't refuse. But I never reported anything private. I never betrayed intimate confidences." "You reported whether I seemed happy," Elena said. "Whether the marriage seemed real." "That's intimate, Mrs. Chun. That's a betrayal of the trust one placed in you when I welcomed you into my home." The older woman's eyes filled with tears. "You're right. I'm sorry. I convinced myself I was protecting you, making sure the brothers treated you well. But I was really just serving a dead man's agenda." Elena turned to Director Kang. "And you? What's your excuse for violating my privacy?" "I have none," the security director said bluntly. "I coordinated surveillance as requested by Mr. Kim Sr. I ensured investigators could track your movements without detection. I facilitated the entire operation. I did it because I'm loyal to the Kim family, and at the time, Mr. Kim Sr. was the head of that family." "Loyalty," Elena repeated. "Is that what you call it? Following orders to stalk an innocent woman?" "I call it a mistake." Director Kang met her eyes directly. "A mistake I regret. If you want my resignation, you have it." Elena filed that away and turned to Attorney Min. "You helped draft a will that turned a marriage into a competition, a woman into a prize. How do you justify that?" The attorney shifted uncomfortably. "Mr. Kim was my client for 30 years. His wishes, however unorthodox, were legal and valid. I advised him that the will could be challenged, that it put undue pressure on all parties involved. He didn't care. He believed he was teaching his sons an important lesson about unity and compromise. By making me the lab rat in his experiment," Elena said bitterly. "Yes," Attorney Min admitted. "And I should have refused to draft it. I should have withdrawn from the case on ethical grounds. I didn't, and that failure of moral courage is something I'll have to live with." Finally, Elena turned to Dr. Yoon, the psychologist who'd created her profile. "You're supposed to help people, to understand them. Instead, You weaponized psychology to manipulate me. Explain that to me, Doctor. Dr. Yoon, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes that now held shame, took a deep breath. Mr. Kim came to me with an unusual request. He wanted to understand what kind of woman would be compatible with his sons, what personality traits would allow someone to thrive in their unusual arrangement. I thought I was helping to ensure a successful match, preventing future heartbreak. By violating every ethical principle of your profession, Elena said. Yes, Dr. Yoon agreed. I told myself it was for research, that understanding personality compatibility in unconventional relationships had academic value. But the truth is, I was fascinated by the challenge. I got so caught up in the intellectual puzzle that I forgot there was a real human being at the center of it. You weren't a case study, Miss Elena. You were a person whose life I helped manipulate, and I'm deeply, profoundly sorry. Elena sat back, studying each of them. Sorry doesn't undo what was done. Sorry doesn't give me back my agency, my privacy, my right to choose my own path. No, it doesn't, Jae-won agreed from beside her. But we need to decide how to move forward from here. Elena, what do you want to do? Elena stood and walked to the window, her back to the room. The city stretched out below her, millions of lives being lived, most of them free from the kind of manipulation she'd endured. She envied those people even as she acknowledged that her situation, while twisted, had also given her something precious. Mrs. Chin, Elena said without turning around. You'll continue as housekeeper, but you'll report only to me now. Not to the executors, not to anyone else. If they ask for information, you'll tell them to speak directly to me. Understood? Yes, Miss Elena. Mrs. Chen's relief was palpable. Director Kong, Elena continued. You'll conduct a full security audit of this penthouse and report to me any surveillance devices, any monitoring systems, anything that could be used to spy on us. Then you'll dismantle all of it. This home becomes truly private or you're fired. Your choice. I'll have the audit completed by morning, Director Kang promised. Attorney Min, Elena turned to face him. You're going to help us find every loophole in that will, every possible way to satisfy its terms while maintaining our autonomy and dignity. And you're going to do it pro bono as penance for your part in creating this mess. The attorney nodded. I can do that. In fact, I've already been reviewing the will with exactly that purpose in mind. There are several clauses that could be interpreted in your favor. And Dr. Yoon, Elena's voice softened slightly. You're going to provide counseling to all three of us. Free of charge, completely confidential, with the goal of helping us build a healthy relationship despite the unhealthy circumstances that created it. You helped break us, now you help fix us. Dr. Yoon stood, her professional demeanor returning. I would be honored to help. And Miss Elena, for what it's worth, reading your profile now with the knowledge of who you've become, I can say with certainty that Mr. Kim Sr. underestimated you significantly. He thought he could predict and control you. He was wrong. Yes, he was, Elena agreed. Because I'm not the woman in that file anymore. That woman was surviving. I'm learning to live, and that makes me unpredictable, dangerous to anyone who tries to control me. After the four conspirators left, Elena collapsed onto the sofa, exhaustion finally overwhelming her. The adrenaline that had carried her through the confrontation drained away, leaving her shaking and hollow. You were magnificent, Taewon said softly, sitting beside her. Absolutely magnificent. I was terrified, Elena admitted. Every second of that, I was terrified I'd break down, that I'd let them see how much they hurt me. But you didn't, Jae-won sat on her other side. You stood your ground, took control, turned your pain into power. That's strength, Elena. Real strength. Elena let herself lean against Taewon's shoulder, felt Jae-won's hand find hers. I meant what I said earlier. I'm staying, I'm fighting for this marriage. But I need you both to understand that I'm not the woman your father chose anymore. I'm becoming someone new, someone he couldn't have predicted or controlled. Can you handle that? Can you love the woman I'm becoming, not just the woman I was? The woman you're becoming is even more incredible than the woman we fell in love with, Taewon said, pressing a kiss to her temple. Stronger, fiercer, more herself. How could we not love that? We fell in love with your potential, Jae-won added. The woman you could become if you were given the chance, the resources, the support. Watching you step into your power, watching you take control of your own story, it's the most beautiful thing I've ever witnessed. Elena felt tears sliding down her cheeks, but these were different from earlier. Not tears of pain or betrayal, but tears of release, of transformation. I want to believe you. I want to trust that this can work, that we can build something real. Then let us prove it, Taewon said. Every day, in every way we can think of. Let us show you that you made the right choice by staying. They sat in silence for a long moment, three people bound together by manipulation, but choosing to stay connected through love. Elena knew the road ahead would be difficult, knew there would be more revelations, more pain, more moments of doubt. But for the first time since learning the truth, she felt like she had some control over her own destiny. The quarterly evaluation is in less than 2 weeks, Elena said finally. We need to prepare. We need to present a united front, show those executors that this marriage is real and strong and everything your father hoped it would be. How do we do that? Jaewon asked. How do we convince them when we're still figuring out how to convince ourselves? Elena sat up, wiping her tears, her mind already working through the problem. We tell them the truth. Not the comfortable lie they expect, but the messy, complicated truth. We tell them about the fighting, the reconciliation, the struggle to build something real from a foundation of manipulation. We show them that real love isn't perfect. It's choosing to stay and fight even when everything is falling apart. That's risky, Taewon said. If we admit to the conflict, to the problems we've had, they might declare the marriage invalid. Or they might see exactly what your father wanted them to see, Elena countered. Two brothers learning to work together, choosing unity over competition, building a family despite the obstacles. Isn't that the whole point of the will? To prove you can overcome your differences for something more important. Jaewon's eyes widened with understanding. You're right. Father didn't want a perfect marriage. He wanted proof that we could fight and reconcile, compete and cooperate, struggle and survive. He wanted to know we were strong enough to handle real life, not just perform for observers. So we give them real life, Elena said. Messy, complicated, honest real life. And we dare them to say it doesn't count. Taewon grinned, the first genuine smile she'd seen from him in days. I love the way your mind works. Father thought he was so clever, setting all these traps. But you're turning them into opportunities. That's what I do, Elena said, feeling strength returning to her voice. I survive. I adapt. I overcome. And anyone who underestimates me, living or dead, is going to learn exactly what I'm capable of. Are you feeling the power shift? Can you sense Elena transforming from victim to victor, taking control of a game she was never meant to win? Subscribe now because the quarterly evaluation is going to be explosive. The next 12 days passed in a blur of preparation and revelation. Elena insisted on complete transparency, so every evening the three of them sat together and shared one truth they'd been hiding. Some truths were small, like Jaewon admitting he'd been sabotaging Taewon's project proposals to the board. Others were devastating, like Taewon confessing he'd considered abandoning Elena and the inheritance entirely just to escape the pressure. But through it all, they kept talking, kept pushing through the discomfort, kept choosing honesty over harmony. And slowly, painfully, something real began to emerge from the wreckage of their manufactured beginning. I need to tell you something, Elena said on the 10th night, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea. They were in the living room, the city lights glittering below them like fallen stars. Something I've been afraid to admit. Both brothers looked at her with concern. What is it? Jaewon asked gently. I'm angry, Elena's voice shook. I'm so angry at your father, at the situation, at the universe for putting me in this position. And some days, I'm angry at you both for not fighting harder against his manipulation, for going along with it, for letting me believe our love was pure when it was tainted from the start. That's fair, Taewon said quietly. You have every right to be angry. But here's the thing, Elena continued, tears gathering in her eyes. I'm also grateful. Because as twisted as this situation is, it brought me to you. It gave me a life I never could have imagined, opportunities one never would have had. It showed me what it feels like to be loved, even if that love started in deception. And I hate that I'm grateful, because being grateful feels like letting your father win. He didn't win. Jaewon moved to kneel in front of her, taking her hands in his. He created the circumstances, yes. But we're the ones who chose to love you. We're the ones who chose to change, to be better, to fight for this marriage instead of just accepting his rules. He tried to control us, but we're taking control back. That's not his victory, Elena. That's ours. I want to believe that, Elena whispered. I want to believe we have real agency here, that we're not just dancing to a dead man's tune. Then believe it, Taewon sat beside her, his hand finding her shoulder. Look at what we've done in the last week and a half. We've restructured the security system, eliminated the spying, confronted everyone who betrayed you. We've shared truths that hurt, we've fought and reconciled, we've built something that father never could have predicted. That's agency, Elena. That's us writing our own story. The day of the quarterly evaluation arrived with gray skies and cold wind that rattled the penthouse windows. Elena dressed in a burgundy suit that Mrs. Chin had selected, powerful and elegant without being overtly sexual. She wore minimal makeup, wanting the evaluators to see her natural face, her honest expression. Remember, she said to both brothers as they prepared to leave. We tell the truth. All of it. The good, the bad, the ugly. We show them a real marriage, not a performance. Are you sure about this? Jaewon adjusted his tie nervously. We could play it safe. Tell them what they want to hear. Safe doesn't build trust, Elena said firmly. Honest builds trust. And I trust us, even when it's hard. The evaluation took place in a conference room at the Kim Industries headquarters. 3 executors sat on one side of a long table, their faces professionally neutral. Attorney Min was there as well, sitting slightly apart, his role both advocate and observer. Mrs. Kim, the lead executor, a severe woman in her 60s named Director Park, began. Thank you for coming. This first quarterly evaluation is crucial in determining whether the terms of the late Mr. Kim's will are being satisfied. We have several questions. Before you start, Elena interrupted, her voice calm but firm. I have a statement I'd like to make. Director Park's eyebrows rose. That's unusual, but proceed. Elena stood, needing to be on her feet for this. My name is Elena. Not Mrs. Kim, not the Kim wife, not the woman in your reports. Elena. And before you ask me your scripted questions designed to determine if I'm being coerced or manipulated, I want you to know something. I know everything. Silence fell over the room. The executors exchanged glances. I know about the investigators who followed me for 18 months, Elena continued. I know about the psychological profile. I know that my meeting with Jaewon and Taewon was orchestrated, not accidental. I know that their father chose me like I was a product being purchased. And I know that you've all been complicit in this manipulation. Miss Elena, Director Park started, but Elena held up her hand. I'm not finished. I know all of this, and I'm still here. Not because I'm trapped, not because I'm being coerced, but because I'm choosing to be here. But let me be very clear about something. The marriage you're evaluating isn't the one Mr. Kim Sr. envisioned. It's better than that. It's real. She sat back down, and Jaewon reached for her hand under the table. She let him take it. Director Park cleared her throat. That's quite a statement, Miss Elena. But our job is to determine whether the marriage meets the terms of the will. Whether it's genuine, whether you entered it freely, whether the brothers are treating you with respect and equality. Then let me answer your unasked questions, Elena said. Yes, the marriage is genuine. Yes, I love both of them in different ways, but with equal intensity. No, I wasn't coerced into staying. I'm staying by choice. And yes, there have been problems, serious problems that we're working through. Because that's what real marriages do. They work through problems instead of pretending they don't exist. What kind of problems? Another executor, an older man named Director Cho, asked with interest. The brothers have been fighting, Elena said bluntly. Over the inheritance, over their father's manipulation, over their own insecurities and jealousies. They've said terrible things to each other. They've questioned whether this arrangement can work. And I've questioned whether I can stay in a marriage where I was selected like a prize mare. The executors looked shocked by her candor. They'd clearly expected carefully rehearsed answers, not raw honesty. But here's what Mr. Kim Sr.'s will was really testing, Elena continued, her voice gaining strength. It wasn't testing whether we could pretend to be a perfect family. It was testing whether we could become a real family despite imperfect circumstances. Whether Jaewon and Taewon could learn to work together instead of competing. Whether they could value something more than individual success. Whether they could build unity from division. And we're doing that. Not perfectly, not easily, but genuinely. How do we know you're not simply performing now? Director Park challenged. Telling us what we want to hear? Because what you want to hear is that everything is perfect, Jae-won spoke up for the first time. That we're blissfully happy with no conflicts. But Elaine is right. Father didn't want perfection. He wanted proof that we could handle reality. And reality is messy. We fought 3 days ago, Taewon added. A real fight, voices raised, things said that we had to apologize for later. It was about a business decision where we disagreed. But instead of letting it fester, instead of using Elena as a pawn in our argument, we talked it out. We compromised. We chose our family over being right. That's what Father wanted to see. Director Park made notes, her expression unreadable. Mrs. Kim, I mean Elena, do you feel safe in this marriage? Do you feel valued, respected, heard? Most days, yes, Elena answered honestly. Some days, no. Some days I feel like I'm drowning in expectations and obligations and the weight of being responsible for holding 2 brothers together. Some days I want to run away and never look back. But I don't, because the good days outweigh the bad ones. Because I'm building something worth staying for. And the physical aspect of the marriage? Director Cho asked delicately. The will requires that the marriage be consummated equally by both brothers. Elena felt her cheeks heat but maintained her composure. That aspect of our marriage is private and consensual and none of your business. But yes, the terms of the will are being satisfied. Both brothers are my husbands in every sense of the word. I have to ask, the third executor, a younger woman named Director Lee, spoke for the first time. Why did you stay when you learned the truth? Most women would have left immediately. Elena considered the question carefully. I stayed because leaving would have been easier, and I'm tired of taking the easy path. I stayed because these 2 men, despite their flaws and their father's manipulation, have shown me what it feels like to be cherished. I stayed because I'm strong enough to turn a bad beginning into a good future. And I stayed because I refuse to let a dead man dictate my choices. He tried to control us, but we're taking that control back. Every day, in every decision, we choose each other. That's real, Director Lee. That's as real as it gets. Director Park set down her pen. I must admit, this is not the evaluation I expected. Most people in your position would present a carefully crafted image of marital bliss. Your honesty is either remarkably brave or remarkably foolish. It's both, Elena said with a slight smile. But it's also strategic. Because if you're going to judge whether this marriage is valid, you need to see the real marriage, not a performance. And the real marriage is complicated and difficult and absolutely worth fighting for. The executors conferred quietly among themselves for several minutes while Elena, Jae-won, and Taewon waited in tense silence. Finally, Director Park looked up. We're satisfied that the marriage is genuine and meets the current terms of the will, she announced. However, we'll be monitoring the situation closely. The next evaluation will be in 3 months, and we'll expect to see continued progress in the brothers' relationship and in your integration into the Kim family structure. There's one more thing, Elena said before they could conclude. The brothers and I have decided that when the year is up and the inheritance is secured, we're donating half of it to charity. We want that decision noted in the official record. The executors looked stunned. Half the inheritance? Director Cho repeated. That's billions of won. We're aware, Jae-won said calmly. It's our decision, made together as a family. Father wanted to teach us about unity and sacrifice. Well, we learned the lesson. Money isn't more important than integrity. Director Park actually smiled, the first genuine expression Elena had seen from her. I think Mr. Kim Sr. would be surprised by this development. Surprised and perhaps secretly pleased. He always said his sons lacked imagination. You've certainly proved him wrong. Besties, can you feel the power of Elena's honesty? Can you sense how she's turned vulnerability into strength, transforming a test into a triumph? Subscribe now because what happens after this evaluation will take your breath away. The drive back to the penthouse was silent, each of them processing what had just happened. Elena stared out the window, watching Seoul pass by in a blur of gray buildings and cold winter light. She'd laid herself bare in that conference room, exposed every vulnerability, every doubt, every fear. And somehow it had worked. You were incredible, Taewon finally said, breaking the silence. The way you took control of that room, the way you refused to let them define us, I've never seen anything like it. I was terrified, Elena admitted, still not looking at them. Every second, I was terrified they'd see through me, that they'd realize I'm barely holding it together. But you're holding it together, J1 said softly. That's what matters. You're not just surviving the situation anymore, Elena. You're conquering it. When they arrived home, Mrs. Chin greeted them with unusual excitement. There's someone here to see you, she said, her eyes bright. She insisted on waiting. I put her in the sitting room. Elena's heart jumped. Who? She said her name is Grace. She said you'd know who she was. Elena's breath caught. Grace. Her best friend from university, the one person who'd known her before any of this started. The friend she'd been slowly losing touch with as her life became consumed by the Kim family drama. Elena practically ran to the sitting room, and there she was. Grace, in her comfortable jeans and oversized sweater, looking completely out of place in the opulent penthouse, but utterly herself. When she saw Elena, she stood, and Elena flew into her arms. Grace, Elena sobbed into her friend's shoulder. Why are you here? Because you've been sending me these weird, vague texts for weeks, Grace said, holding her tightly. Because I could tell something was wrong even though you kept saying everything was fine. And because I got on a plane from Lagos yesterday, because that's what best friends do when they know each other is drowning. They held each other for a long moment before Elena pulled back, wiping her tears. Grace, I'm so sorry. I should have told you everything. I should have reached out. Yes, you should have, Grace agreed. But you're going to tell me now. Everything, Elena. No more hiding. Elena turned to find Jae-won and Tae-won standing in the doorway, watching the reunion with careful expressions. Grace, these are my husbands. Jae-won and Tae-won Kim. Grace's eyebrows shot up. Husbands. Plural. Well, that explains some of the vague texts. She studied both brothers with the protective scrutiny of a best friend. You're the ones who married my girl without inviting me to the wedding? It was complicated, Tae-won started, but Grace held up her hand. I'm sure it was. And you're going to explain all those complications while Elena and I have some girl time. Alone. Without you two hovering like worried bodyguards. Grace, Elena started, but her friend shook her head. No, Elena. You need this. You need someone who knew you before all of this. Someone who can remind you of who you are when you're not being Mrs. Kim. So these handsome men are going to leave us alone for a few hours, and you're going to tell me everything. To Elena's surprise, Jae-won nodded. You're right. Elena does need that. We'll be in my office if you need us. After the brothers left, Grace turned to Elena with an expression of mixed concern and curiosity. Okay, start from the beginning. And I mean the actual beginning, not the sanitized version. So Elena told her. Everything. The orchestrated meeting, the whirlwind courtship, the unusual marriage arrangement, the father's will, the manipulation, the fighting, the reconciliation, the evaluation that morning. Every painful, complicated detail of the past few months. Grace listened without interruption, her expression shifting from shock to anger to understanding and back to shock. When Elena finally finished, her friend sat back on the sofa, exhaling slowly. That is, without question, the most insane thing I've ever heard, Grace said. And I once watched a man try to fight a crocodile in Lagos, so that's saying something. Despite everything, Elena laughed. It sounds even crazier when I say it out loud. Elena, Grace took her hands, her voice serious. Do you love them? Really love them. Not just love the life they've given you or the escape they represent from your old struggles. Elena thought about the question, really thought about it. Yes, she said finally. I love them. I love Jae-won's quiet intensity, the way he solves problems like they're puzzles. I love how he brings me coffee every morning and remembers exactly how I like it. I love that he's learning to be vulnerable, to admit when he's wrong. And I love Taewon's passion, the way he sees beauty in everything. I love the drawings he leaves for me, the way he makes me laugh even when I'm angry. I love that he fights for what he believes in, even when it's hard. But, Grace prompted, hearing the hesitation. But I also hate that I love them, Elena admitted. I hate that my love was manufactured by circumstance instead of growing organically. I hate that I'll never know if I would have loved them anyway, if we'd met under normal circumstances. That uncertainty, it eats at me. Listen to me, Grace squeezed her hands. I've known you since we were 18 years old. I've seen you date, seen you develop crushes, seen you fall in and out of love. And I have never seen you look at anyone the way you looked at those two men. Not with that combination of love and frustration and absolute certainty. What do you mean? I mean that yes, your meeting was manufactured. Yes, their father manipulated the circumstances. But Elena, no amount of manipulation can create real love. It can create attraction, maybe even infatuation. But the way you defended them in that story you just told me, the way your face lit up when you talked about their small gestures, the way you fought for this marriage instead of running from it, that's real. That's yours, not their father's creation. Elena felt something loosen in her chest, a knot of doubt she'd been carrying for weeks. You really think so? I know so, Grace said firmly. And here's what else I know. You're one of the strongest people I've ever met. You survived poverty, survived being an outsider in a foreign country, survived losing everyone you loved, and kept going anyway. If you decided to stay in this marriage, it's because you saw something worth fighting for. Trust that judgment, Elena. Trust yourself. They talked for hours, Grace sharing news from home, stories about mutual friends, updates on her own life that reminded Elena there was a world beyond the Kim family drama. It was grounding, centering, exactly what Elena needed. When Jae-won and Tae-won finally emerged from the office, Grace subjected them to an interrogation that would have made the quarterly evaluators look gentle. She asked pointed questions about their intentions, their commitment, their willingness to put Elena's needs ahead of their father's will. Let me be very clear about something, Grace said, standing between the brothers with her arms crossed. Elena is my best friend. She's like a sister to me. And if either of you hurt her, if either of you take her love for granted or use her as a pawn in your family games, you will answer to me. I don't care how rich you are or how powerful your family is. You will answer to me. Understood, both brothers said in unison, and Elena could see they actually meant it. Good, Grace's expression softened slightly. Now, that said, I can see you both love her. I can see it in the way you look at her, the way you stood aside to give her space with me even though it clearly killed you. So here's my advice. Keep choosing her. Every day, in every decision, choose Elena. Not the inheritance, not your father's approval, not your own pride. Her. Always her. We will, Jae-won promised. We are. Grace stayed for 3 days, her presence a balm to Elena's wounded spirit. They cooked together, laughed together, cried together. Grace met Mrs. Chin and charmed her completely. She toured the penthouse and declared it ridiculously over the top but kind of amazing. She even convinced the brothers to take them all out for street food, insisting that real Korean experience didn't happen in fancy restaurants. On Grace's last night, they had dinner together, all 4 of them, and Elena watched as her old life and new life merged into something that felt whole. I have to go back tomorrow, Grace said over dessert. But I need you to promise me something, Elena. Promise me you'll keep being honest. With them, with yourself, with me. No more vague texts. No more pretending everything is fine when it's not. I promise, Elena said, meaning it. After Grace left for the airport the next morning, Elena stood at the window watching the city wake up. She felt different, more centered, more certain. Grace's visit had reminded her of who she was before all of this, and that reminder had somehow made her more confident about who she was becoming. Are you okay? Tae-won asked, coming to stand beside her. I am, Elena said, surprised to realize it was true. For the first time in weeks, I actually am. Jae-won joined them at the window, and the 3 of them stood in comfortable silence, watching Seoul come to life below them. I've been thinking, Elena said finally, about what we said at the evaluation. About donating half the inheritance. I want to be more specific about where it goes. What do you have in mind? Jae-won asked. Scholarships, Elena said. For international students, especially those from Africa, who want to study in Korea. Students who have the intelligence and drive, but not the money or connections. Students like I was before I met you. That's perfect, Tae-won said softly. Father tried to use his money to control people. We'll use it to set them free instead. We'll need to set up a foundation. Jae-won's business mind was already working. Create a board, establish criteria, hire administrators. It's a significant undertaking. Then it's a good thing we have 11 months to plan it, Elena smiled. 11 months to build something good from something that started bad. 11 months to prove that we're not just playing our father's game, we're creating our own. She turned to face them both, These two men who had become her world in such a short time. "I love you," she said simply. "Both of you. Not because your father chose me for you, not because of the will or the inheritance or any of the manipulation. I love you because of who you are, who you're becoming, who we're becoming together. And that love, that's ours. No one can take it away or diminish it or claim credit for it. It's ours. It's ours," they echoed, and in that moment, Elena knew with absolute certainty that she'd made the right choice. The circumstances might have been wrong, but the love was real. And real love, hard-won and battle-tested, was worth any amount of difficulty. The story of how Elena married two brothers might have started with manipulation and deception, but it was ending with truth and choice and a love that no one, not even a controlling father reaching from beyond the grave, could have predicted or manufactured. It was messy and complicated and absolutely, perfectly real. And for Elena, standing between two men who had learned to be brothers again because of her, who had learned to value unity over competition because of her, who had learned that love was worth more than any inheritance. That reality was more beautiful than any fairy tale could have been. This was her life now. Chosen, fought for, earned. And she wouldn't trade it for anything. Besties, if Elena's journey has captured your heart, if you felt every moment of her pain and triumph, if you believe in love that conquers even the most impossible circumstances, then you need to subscribe right now. Because this is what real love looks like, messy and complicated and absolutely worth fighting for. Hit that subscribe button and join a community that celebrates stories of strength, resilience, and love that defies every expectation. Your next emotional journey is waiting. Subscribe now and thank me later when you're completely addicted to stories that makes you believe in the impossible.